Good morning. It's good to see you all. So I don't know about you. There's been a lot of energy in the world this last week. And really have felt it very powerfully. And people have felt very emboldened. And regardless of where you personally fall in your worldly beliefs and your worldly affiliations, I don't think any of us can deny that people have felt emboldened. And along with that, a lot of other feelings. So if we've considered emotions is another way of saying energy in motion. And we feel emotions in our body, the energy in motion. So we have, and people are feeling emboldened. They're also feeling unsure. People are feeling afraid. And people are also feeling hopeful. And people are feeling, in a lot of ways, a lot more together than they have through the challenges and through all of the uncertainty that's come up in these last many months, actually. And of course, in Unity, we believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So let's take this moment, and this is the reason why I did a third eye meditation, is to take this moment and to become acutely aware of our spiritual truth. And I appreciate, Carol, that you referred to what I spoke about last time about that the peace that the Christ gives us is not the peace the world gives us. Because it's very much also part of my theme today as well. So let's be aware of the human experience and be even more aware of the spiritual truth. That's my invitation to you this morning. And what I'd like to do is a little experiment. And if you all have your bulletins with you, just make a little tube. And you might recall this. This is something I learned way back in grade school, and I'm not sure if they still teach it, but I know others of you will have remembered this as well. But simply, you take a tube like this, and you put it up to one of your eyes. And just be careful; don't give yourself a paper cut on your eye, but just put it up there and look through it. And then you take your hand, and you put your hand next to it, and just gaze forward. Just gaze straight forward, looking through both the tube and at your hand. Anybody want to tell me what you see? A hole through your hand. Everybody get that? So if you roll it up, right, you're looking straight ahead at both through the tube and at your hand. And what starts to happen is you start to see literally a hole in your hand. Yeah, keep both eyes open. You're not. Both eyes open.
I would.
Keep both eyes. So you have So you're looking through the tube in one eye, and you're looking at your hand in the other. You're just gazing forward. So what you're seeing there is a hole in your hand. Now, do you really have a hole in your hand? No, but it looks like it, right? And my point with all this is that beware the testimony of the five physical senses. And when we see it, it looks like a hole, but I know it's not really a hole in my hand. But it looks like one. Think back to when you were a kid and some of your favorite foods. Things that, you really liked. And then do you still have the same taste that you did when you were maybe 6 or 7 years old? Or 10? right? There's certainly things that, like, I just don't understand, like, how did I like that when I was a kid? Sardines are one of them. Used to love sardines when I was a little kid because my dad ate them, but now I just can't do it. So our tastes change. And this is all to say that the testimony of the five senses is variable. And Jesus had talked about beware of not building your house, meaning your faith, and meaning your spiritual self. Don't build your house on the shifting sand. Build it on the rock. And when we're immersed in the world, so again, we're having this human experience, very easy for us to get in trouble by relying on the testimony of the five senses. Granted, very powerful because that's the physical world we're in. So we are discerning everything with our five senses. Yet, we've just demonstrated to you that our senses will play tricks on us. You could walk into a room, or let's say a kitchen. Let's say a group of people walk into a kitchen, and where there's food cooking. Every person might smell a different thing, right? Because all of our senses are perceiving things differently, and they have different levels of attunement. Now, what I'm offering is that because we are spiritual, or the truth of our spiritual selves, that spiritual sense, that sixth sense, that sense that we can get in touch with by meditating on the third eye, that is the truth. And when we, as Jesus said, set our mind on the things of God, our spiritual discernment is our most powerful sense. So the world of appearance is variable. And we've all experienced that, especially in these last several months of what's going on in the world and in the nation. Now, the human experience, human vocations, the work of human work, is very good at telling you, oh, you see that hole in your hand. I will fix that hole in your hand for you. I will sell you a lotion that will fix the hole in the hand for you, right? Even though there's really not a hole in your hand. Because that's the business of human. Jesus talked about, I must be about my Father's business, meaning God's business, and that's the business of God is the business of building and enhancing the spiritual sense. And that's building the spiritual sense, the third eye sense, is to build your house on the rock. That's the business of God. So, the world of spirit is the truth. And the world of the five senses is always variable. And make no mistake, I don't suggest that anybody go out and try to completely deny the five physical senses, because we have them for a reason, right? It's not as if you can go out driving and then pretend that those cars out there aren't real on the road, and or the red lights aren't real, right? So there is a level of reality that is tactile and true about what our five senses present. Just beware that they are not absolute. The only absolute sense that we all have is the sixth sense, the spiritual sense. And it's the concept of not judging by appearances. So if you hold that tube up to one eye and you look at your hand with other, the appearance is that you have a hole in your hand. So don't judge by the appearance, judge by the right judgment, which is a metaphysical way of saying right thinking. And the right thinking is like, I know I don't have a hole in my hand. So I was walking through downtown Valpo yesterday, and actually not aware that there were things scheduled. If you'd gone through downtown Valpo, there were rallies scheduled, and they had back-to-back rallies for different causes, and this was happening all around the nation. Of course, I think in Porter County, Valpo was like the epicenter of it, and I just was like walking through it, and there were people with all sorts of signs saying all sorts of different things. And I was, and because I was not aware of it in advance, I really actually didn't have any preconceived notions about what was going on. So I chose just to be aware of my energy, what is my human experience in this moment, and how is my energy, my emotion, right? My energy and motion, how is it being affected? And I just paid attention to that. And that emotion, that energy ranged from feeling a little nervous to feeling very alert, to feeling a sense of oneness, because there were certainly people in that crowd who were really about advocating for the love, and also felt a little annoyed because it was just I wasn't prepared for it, right? So all these emotions are going on, and I thought, okay, well, this is actually a really interesting experience I'm having in preparation for today's talk, because can I live the truth that I'm talking about and being in tune with my spiritual sense? So I did that. And I took a moment and I was like, okay, let me go to my sixth sense. And the powerful thing for me was that I stopped judging the situation. I didn't put any expectations around the situation. I didn't judge the people who were holding up signs advocating for various things. And the really powerful thing was that I felt just a sense of universal love. So letting go of the testimony of my five senses and focusing on the one sense, the spiritual sense, I was able to see the greater good, the higher purpose, and through that sixth sense, we see God. Right? And we don't see God through the five physical senses, and I think this is where people get very confused. I know I did before I became a student of metaphysics. Is that we wonder, well, where's God in all of this? I can't see God. I don't. God doesn't talk to me. I don't hear God. Some people, and there are mystics who certainly do. I'm not one of those. It's taught me, and I think one of my lessons on Earth in this manifestation, this particular manifestation called Stephen, is to develop my sixth sense, and to see, and to hear, and to feel, and to discern God through this, and not to get caught up in, well, if I don't hear the voice of God literally, there must be something wrong with me, or I'm not evolved enough, or I'm not faithful enough. Because that would be the suggestion of what metaphysically the serpent, right? In the Garden of Eden, the serpent is metaphysically the suggestion. It's the suggestion of the communal mortal mind, and not the divine mind. So the other thing I saw in that crowd yesterday, or the other thing that I saw with my sixth sense in that crowd yesterday, and came to a realization of and an appreciation of and a compassion for was that the hope is that we are all striving to become whole. So regardless of where anyone falls on the social spectrum, the political spectrum, the professional spectrum, people are all striving to become whole. And that's the hope. We don't always agree on what that is. And in the human experience, we probably never will. What I'm offering today is an invitation to continue to develop your spiritual sense. And as you do that, that heightened awareness of oneness, the transcending of all of the different positions that we've taken in this human form, they become less important. And I'm not saying that in the sense of, it's like, I'm not suggesting like don't advocate for what you believe in, don't speak. I'm not saying don't speak out for what you believe in or what you advocate in or what really moves you. What I'm suggesting and what I'm inviting you to do is to do it not so much from the base of the five senses, but do it from the development of that sixth sense. And make the effort to really to refine your powers of discernment from the spiritual sense. Because that work you do then out in the world, that advocacy and everything else that goes along with it will become all the more powerful, will become all the more effective, will be all the more blessed, will be all the more graced, as well as the beneficiaries of your work. Now, there's a big difference between when someone in purely his or her human form says, I can fix that for you. I am the only one who can fix that for you. And we've heard this from both sides so over the years. So the big difference between saying I am from your human self and then where we get confused in Scripture, and this is why people sort of get turned off by religion, right, is that Jesus said I am. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, I am the bread. And they're like, boy, he's got a big ego, doesn't he? And a lot of those sayings, and Carol had referred to me quoting from John last time. So John is the most metaphysical of the Gospels. And the Gospel of John was written from the perspective of Jesus completely putting aside his egoic self. It's not to say he didn't have one, but the Gospel of John is really, truly a completely metaphysical gospel in the sense that Jesus had so put aside his personal self. And when he said, I am, he's talking completely from his spiritual self. And we can all do that too. So using the words I am as speaking from our spiritual selves has got great power and great inclusiveness. Because when we do that, we really are coming from a consciousness of oneness. If we speak I am using the little I, the personal I, we're speaking from a consciousness of individuality. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble as human beings. But the hope, as I said, is that we're all striving to become whole. So even the person speaking from the little I, the I of the persona, is seeking to become whole. And how do we, as aware spiritual beings having a human experience, how do we, what's our work? Like, how do we encourage the rest of the world that might be coming from more of a kind of a little I am, right? And it's simply just being an example. Jesus had washed the feet of the disciples, and Peter was like, what are you doing? I mean, you're like this, you're the king of Israel and you're washing my feet. And Jesus is basically, you don't get it. It's not about my ego. It's about my service. It's about the sacredness of my service, and my service coming from my spiritual self. Lesson that's taken me a long time to learn was and I think any of us who have been servants, especially in a church situation or in a charitable situation, we can get burnt out. Like, we do this work for so long and so long and so long, and you're like, and people don't appreciate it, and it's like, oh, there's like a core group of people who do the same stuff over and over again. It's like, why is anybody else helping out? And I went through that too. And it took me a long time to get to the point where it's not about my personal self. It's about coming from, it's using my spiritual sense in doing that work. And if I do that, and when I do that, then I'm not so worried about what my ego is feeling. Because then, when I'm doing my service from the discernment of my spiritual sense, it's me and God. And not just me and God, but me as God. And you as God doing the work. Because then we don't get attached to what other people think of us or not. So when Jesus Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, don't confuse the person Jesus with the Spirit of Christ. So Jesus Christ was not his name. There's no birth certificate that said Jesus Christ, born December 25th, the year zero. I mean, the Christ was a title, right? The Christ title for the Messiah, and more importantly, the Christ is a title for healer, right? We're all striving to become whole. And the one thing that probably one of the most powerful scriptures, Charles Fillmore had one, which I'll tell you in a moment, but for me, one of the most powerful scriptures is that Jesus told us from his enlightened Christ self that he has done great things, through his spiritual sense, but that greater things will you do. So just think about that for a second. Greater things will you do. And if there was ever a time for those greater things to happen, it's really right now in the world. And just meditate on that. Meditate on that idea, that heightened spiritual idea coming from the third eye, that greater things will you do than the Christ in me has done, and the Christ through me. Now, Charles Fillmore said that the greatest scripture was from Paul, that Christ in you, the hope of glory. He thought that was the greatest teaching, which is very much in the theme with Jesus saying of greater things will you do. So the thing that we really want to keep coming back to is that the Christ is our spiritual sense. The only begotten Son is the way of saying that the only thing that's been begotten is the Spirit. And we're all inheritors of the Spirit. So it's not about any one individual person. It's about the Spirit that animates every one of us. And in the world of appearance, in the testimony of the five senses, the sands will always shift. Right? So really be attuned to anybody claiming that I am going to fix the world for you all. Jesus had told us to keep your eye single. Keep that spiritual sense single. Keep it focused. Keep it truly built on the foundation of rock, which is the Christ within, your hope of glory. And when you do that, that's wholeness. Right? That's healing. That's abundance. Whatever word, and the words are infinite. There aren't enough words in the dictionary to describe what the Christ is. But it's all that is good. Good and powerful and healing and whole. And it's all right here. And it flows all through you and as you. So continue to build your spiritual sense. Salvation is another word. Right? So salvation is healing, wholeness. Build your spiritual sense. Make that effort. Make that choice. And as you do it for yourself, it can't help but ripple out. And that's really, our work is the work of building the spiritual sense and being literally the children of God on earth. The spiritual beings being the truth. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we can make the most of our human experience by developing our spiritual sense. And I have absolute faith and trust and just know that each and every one of you can do it, and you are doing it, and that you will continue to do it. So that's my message for you all today. Thank you.